Las Vegas, also known as Sin City, has an interesting past as Vegas was built by a lot of money from organized crime. Today, we look at the past, the mobsters that worked to build their empires, and the brave members of law enforcement who tried to stop them as we tour the Mob Museum. The museum is easy to find as it's located just 2 blocks north of the Fremont Street Experience on Stewart Avenue. The Mob Museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can either purchase your tickets online or at the Mob Museum as we did. We will put a link to the museum's website in the description below. When you purchase tickets, you have 3 options: general admission, a deluxe package which gains you access to 1 interactive experience, or a premier pass which gives you access to 2 interactive experiences which we'll talk about in just a second. We chose to do the deluxe pass, which had 1 interactive experience. The interactive experiences include a crime lab, a distillery tour and tasting, and a simulated firearm training experience. We chose to do the crime lab. This 25-minute experience allows you to work as a forensic scientist and study fingerprint analysis, DNA profiles, determine how a crime is committed, and secure the evidence for the case. There's also a distillery tour and tasting which is about 30 minutes long, where you will sample house-made spirits and learn about Prohibition and drinking culture that existed during Prohibition. Lastly is the Firearm Training Simulator, which is an immersive experience where you will make similar split-second decisions that law enforcement officers have to do on a daily basis. A trainer will lead you through those video trainings and a live role-playing scenario. The museum is located in the former post office and courthouse that was opened in 1933. The federal government sold the building to the city in 2002 for $1 with the stipulation that it be preserved and used as a cultural center, preferably a museum.
Gentlemen, come on over. We're going to head up to the 3rd floor. This is where the museum starts. You just work your way down, 3, 2, 1, and then the basement. Perfect. Thank you.
This elevator takes you up to the 3rd floor to begin your tour. Once on the 3rd floor, this video directs you to the right to begin the tour.
I see you found the 3rd floor. Your experience begins this way.
As we make our way to the right, you'll first come across this one-way glass lineup, which is great for a photo op. If you stand on the backside, all you see is yourself in the mirror, but everyone else can see you, just like in a typical police lineup. As we make our way down the hall, you'll see a room where one of the many videos play in a loop and talks about how immigrants came over and worked hard, but a few wanted to take some shortcuts. This was the beginning of the mob in America.
Huge waves of immigrants landed on our shores in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Most put their faith in the system, in the police, the courts, their jobs. Bit by bit, they worked their way out of the ghetto. A few, however, thought they could choose a shortcut to the American dream.
We thought this map gave a lot of insight as to how the mob was connected throughout the country and even in Cuba. It's no surprise how Las Vegas was a key player looking at this map. Moving on, we enter the Arizona Club Room. This room has many historical artifacts from the early to mid-1900s when the Hoover Dam was being built. Hoover Dam was instrumental in the growth of Las Vegas's early years. There is a lot to look through in this room, and we spent quite a while here going over all the different writings, photos, and artifacts. It was really interesting. Moving on, this next room highlights all the history from the period of Prohibition. During Prohibition, the mob gained a lot of power with bootlegging and speakeasies. There are 2 main parts to this room, the first being this incredible brick wall that is actual bricks from the St. Valentine Massacre that were brought in and reconstructed. It shows the actual bullet markings on the wall. There's a movie screen that drops down in front of the wall and plays a short documentary about the massacre. The second part of this exhibit shows how the government went after the mob and organized crime in the early 30s. The creation of the Untouchables, a special team of federal agents handpicked for their incorruptibility, was led by Eliot Ness, who was famous for bringing down Al Capone. Meanwhile, J. Edgar Hoover brought about the creation of the FBI in the mid-1930s and expanded it into a large crime-fighting agency. In this era, these G-men became famous, and comic strips were even created, like Dick Tracy, who was based on the federal agent Eliot Ness, and even made into movies. We really liked the display of shotguns and clothing the G-men wore, as it gave a good idea of what they used to combat crime during this period. Moving forward, we came across this replica electric chair, and people are even allowed to sit in it, that is, if you have the courage. The last part of the third floor tour took us through a maze, showing us how the mob began to diversify in the late 1930s and onward, getting involved in casinos, sports, drugs, and even Hollywood. As we make our way to the second floor, we come across the original courtroom where the famous Kefauver hearings were held in the early 1950s. This was a special Senate committee to investigate organized crime in interstate commerce and was chaired by Senator Kefauver. The hearings were televised live and made the senator famous. The result of this committee led to many significant outcomes, including the passage of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act of 1970. The next exhibit is called Open City. We both liked this room a lot. We took a break and sat down in some of these very comfortable couches and just took it all in for a few minutes. Here is where we learned about how in the 1940s and 50s, the mob-connected individuals were responsible for the bulk of the resorts on the Las Vegas Strip, transforming this area into an international gambling destination. It was called an open city because the mob syndicate could invest here, and they came from all over the country to do so. The skim room, as it's called, shows how mob bosses devised clever schemes to skim percentages of cash from the casinos before it was ever counted. That money was then quietly sent back east, untaxed. Even though it's not real, standing in a room with all that money was sure fun. On display here is the actual last gas chamber chair ever used in Nevada in 1979. It has been on loan from the Nevada State Museum in Carson City since 2015. Back on floor 1 is the exhibit that talks about how organized crime today has flourished with the various cartels and how they traffic drugs throughout all of North and South America. Here on the first floor is where you will find the gift shop, the firearm training simulator, and the crime lab, which we took part in.
Today we've got 5 simulated stations, and then we got one little extra station here that you can partake in. These guys are just finishing up here on our autopsy table. So the way that works is we have a digital autopsy. It's preloaded. There's 3 actual mob hits on there. You will select a case. A computer-generated image of a body is going to appear. What you're going to do is answer a series of multiple choice questions to try and determine the cause of death, very much like what a medical examiner does in real life. Now, if you happen to be a fan of the movie Casino, case number 3 represents what happened to the real-life version of the Joe Pesci character. So it kind of has a little bit of a Las Vegas connection. We have DNA profiling right over here. Now, this represents one of the newest tools in our arsenals within crime labs. DNA profiling has been out since the late 80s. Changed a little bit. Our simulation is modeled after gel electrophoresis, which is commonly utilized in our crime labs today, and it's also taught at the high school level now throughout the United States. We have fingerprint analysis over there on the right.
This was a worthwhile add-on to our tour, and we're glad we decided to do it, as it was a lot of fun. This first station was ballistics. We had to match the markings on a bullet to the barrel of a gun. We both were able to match it up after a little bit of practice.
I was right. Bullet 1.
The second station was a DNA analysis. Here, you place DNA samples into a designated tray. You get the results on the screen and have to match up the DNA samples to each other. The third station is fingerprint analysis. You place your finger in the scanner and it gives you a printout of the type of fingerprint you have and what mobster is similar to your fingerprint.
What did you get?
I got the same one you did.
The last station we went to was the medical examiner station. This was a little bit graphic, so we won't show this on the video, but it was educational and we did learn a lot. We definitely recommend taking some time and visiting the Mob Museum when you are in Las Vegas. We learned a lot and we had a lot of fun. We hope you enjoyed this video and were able to get some valuable information on visiting the Mob Museum. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified of all of our upcoming adventures.